There is a passage in Scripture that suggests something almost invisible stands guard over the lives of the faithful, like a fence you cannot see but can certainly feel. A boundary set by God Himself, keeping chaos and evil at a distance. But in the story of Job, that unseen barrier was intentionally lowered, and in the moment it disappeared, the most spiritually guarded man on earth became the focus of a terrifying challenge made in heaven, a wager between God and the adversary. This is the full account of Job, not a simplified Sunday school version, but the complete and unsettling narrative of what truly unfolded. Imagine a man seated in ashes outside the city limits. His body is covered in inflamed sores from the bottom of his feet to the crown of his head. His skin is cracked, swollen, infected. He reaches into the refuse heap and finds a broken fragment of pottery, dragging its sharp edge across his own flesh to calm the maddening itch that feels like fire beneath his skin. The stench of sickness surrounds him. Passers-by avert their eyes and cover their faces. Yet, only one day earlier, this same man stood at the height of power in the ancient world. This was Job. He was not merely devout. He was influential. In a culture where wealth was measured in livestock and land rather than coins, Job was a titan. 7,000 sheep grazed under his authority. 3,000 camels carried his goods across trade routes. Hundreds of oxen plowed his fields. He possessed enough resources to sustain entire communities. Men of status often fall because of corruption, pride, or cruelty. But Job's downfall followed none of those patterns. He was described as upright, blameless, careful to turn away from evil. He was vigilant about his integrity. He even offered sacrifices on behalf of his children, not because they had sinned, but because they might have. He believed that righteousness built a shield around his household. What he could not see was that his faithfulness had drawn attention beyond the earth. While Job knelt in prayer, his name was spoken in a realm he had never entered. Scripture describes a gathering in heaven, an assembly of spiritual beings before God, and among them stood an accuser, not a cartoon villain with horns, but an intelligent, watchful presence. When asked where he had come from, he answered plainly. He had been roaming the earth, observing humanity. God pointed to Job as a man of exceptional character. The accuser responded with cold logic. Does Job fear God for nothing? He argued that Job's faith was transactional, that the reason Job obeyed was because he was protected, because a hedge, an invisible boundary surrounded him and his possessions. Remove the protection, he suggested. Touch what he owns. He will curse you openly. God permitted the test. Everything Job possessed was placed in the adversary's reach, except his life. In that instant, the unseen fence vanished. Job felt nothing change. The sky did not darken, no alarm sounded, but spiritually, he was exposed. The attack began with ruthless precision. In a day when their 10 children were gathered together in celebration, enjoying a feast in their eldest brother's home, disaster struck in waves. A messenger ran in breathless. Raiders from the south, the Sabaeans, had stormed the fields. They stole the oxen and donkeys. The servants were slaughtered. Only one survivor escaped to deliver the news. Before he finished speaking, another arrived. Lightning, described as fire from heaven, had fallen and consumed the sheep and their shepherds. While he was still speaking, a third messenger came. The Chaldeans attacked from the north in coordinated groups, seizing the camels and killing the guards. Job's agricultural wealth, his trade routes, his economic foundation, gone within an hour. But the final report cut deeper than any loss of property. A powerful wind swept in from the desert and struck the house where his children were gathered. The structure collapsed. All 10 were buried beneath the rubble. In a single day, Job lost his wealth and his heirs. He tore his robe, he shaved his head, a cultural sign of grief so profound it required visible expression. And then, astonishingly, he fell to the ground and worshipped. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. The adversary had stripped away everything external, but he had not shattered Job's allegiance. The first round of the wager ended in failure for the accuser. Yet he returned for a second hearing. This time his argument was harsher. A man may endure financial ruin and grief, he claimed, but no one withstands relentless physical agony. Skin for skin, he said, a phrase suggesting that a person will sacrifice anything to preserve his own body. Permission was granted again. Job's life would be spared, but his health would not. Soon, malignant ulcers covered him completely. He was driven from his home and sat among ashes, likely the city's refuse heap, where the outcasts lingered. The wealthy patriarch became an object of pity and horror. The broken pottery shard became his only relief. But perhaps the deepest wound came not from disease, but from the voice of his wife, the only family member left alive. She too had lost everything, 10 children buried, security destroyed. Watching her husband rot in misery, she urged him toward what seemed like mercy. Curse God and die. In her despair, death appeared kinder than prolonged suffering. But Job refused. Shall we receive good from God and not trouble? He was bankrupt, grieving, sick, and misunderstood. Then 3 figures approached: Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, men of status and wisdom. When they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. The transformation was that severe. They wept, they tore their garments, they threw dust into the air. And they sat with him in silence for 7 days. During that week, their presence was comfort enough, but silence eventually gave way to speech. Job broke first, not by cursing God, but by lamenting his own birth. He wished the day he was born had vanished into darkness. He expressed raw anguish. His friends, however, had already formed conclusions. To them, suffering this catastrophic could only mean guilt. The universe, they believed, operated by strict moral math. Righteousness equals blessing, sin equals punishment. Eliphaz spoke first, gently but firmly suggesting that no innocent person perishes like this. Bildad followed, implying that perhaps Job's children died because of hidden wrongdoing. Zophar sharpened the accusation further. Their theology left no room for unexplained suffering. They defended God by prosecuting Job. What they did not know, what the reader alone knows, is that Job's suffering was not punishment. It was the fallout of a cosmic challenge. Trapped between confessing sins he had not committed and appearing arrogant by defending himself, Job chose a daring course. He would appeal directly to God. He used legal language, declaring he had prepared his case and desired an audience. He wanted clarity, charges, justice. But when he sought God, he felt only silence. East, west, no response. Yet in the depths of despair, a breakthrough statement emerged. I know that my Redeemer lives. The term he used referred to a kinsman redeemer, one who defends family rights. Job believed that somehow, beyond this life, a defender stood for him. Then finally, God answered. Not with explanations about the wager, not with details about the adversary. A storm formed, a whirlwind. From within it, a voice spoke. But instead of answering Job's questions, God asked his own. Where were you when the foundations of the earth were laid? Can you command the morning? Do you bind the constellations? The interrogation expanded from Job's personal tragedy to the architecture of the universe. God spoke of oceans restrained by boundaries, stars held in place, constellations guided through space. Then came Behemoth, a creature of immense strength beyond human control. Then Leviathan, a symbol of chaos and terror. Fire from its mouth, scales impenetrable. For humanity, chaos is a monster. For God, it is manageable. The message was unmistakable. The governance of existence exceeds human calculation. Job placed his hand over his mouth. I spoke of things I did not understand. He did not receive the answer he expected, but he encountered the one who governs all things. Then the reversal came. God turned to the friends, not to condemn Job, but them. They had not spoken rightly about him. They were instructed to offer sacrifices and ask Job to pray for them. The man they had accused was now their intercessor. And as Job prayed for his friends, those who had wounded him with words, his restoration began. His health returned. His fortunes doubled. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him again. He lived long enough to see generations beyond his own. Job never learned about the heavenly wager, but he learned something greater, the vastness of divine wisdom. He endured not because he was flawless, but because he remained honest. He grieved openly, he questioned boldly, and he forgave completely. The invisible fence may have been lowered, but it was not forgotten. And the man who once sat in ashes rose again, not merely restored, but refined. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to The Secret of the Bible Hub for more Bible contents.